Well, hello. I hope you're doing well. I'd like to talk to you today about courage. It's a very powerful subject. I am sure that you've read many quotes and probably read some books and seen some movies about the subject. But oftentimes it seems to be misunderstood, and oftentimes it's tied to bravado or macho or a war movie, which is courageous or overcoming something. But sometimes courage really is required when you've experienced tremendous failure. And those of you who know my background, know what I've been through, know that I've been through a painful divorce and a lot of challenges that came about in my life, and many of those things, of course, things that I brought on myself. And this message really isn't about justifying. This message is about understanding what courage really is. A pastor once told me, a gentleman Danny Silk out of Bethel, he said, he was asked a question, what do you do with people that fail? What do you do with people that really just fall and they just make a mistake and they just have this, terrible situation going on in life as their own choices? And he says, there's a couple things to remember. Number one, I need you to be as powerful as you possibly can. I need you to be as strong as you've ever been in your convictions, because it is going to take your best to fix the problems that you've made. You see, oftentimes the world wants you to evaporate. They want you to be small. They want you to get so small they can control you and put you over in the naughty corner or kick you off into the badlands, or then they can control you and make you act the way that they want you to act. So therefore, because they believe if they can control you, then you will not do what you've done. And maybe that's true. Maybe some of those controlling factors do work. But unfortunately, control only works as long as the controller's around. True change needs to happen from the inside out. And the idea of becoming brave and having courage is learning how to create the internal pressure that forces you to begin to evaluate and make the internal changes that have an external long-term result. Because disappearing doesn't help, right? We want to do what honors God, not what honors man. We want to make that change in the name of God, not in the name of man. You see, because man's opinions are very fleeting, but God's opinion is eternal. And typically, those that want you to be small typically are already very small, right? And I think Gandhi said that you do not serve the world by being small. You serve the world by bringing a light to the world and being a powerful presence and influencing great change. So it's learning how to deal with that. It's learning how to have that mindset that I'm going to keep going. I'm going to face this. I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to go through changes. Even if it seems as though the whole world has abandoned, the whole world is judged, the whole world is angry, that you failed in such a colossal way. Or maybe you've set such an audacious goal that everybody around you doesn't believe you. Everybody around you thinks you're nutty and crazy and that's too big, and why think so big? And we got to understand that courage is not the absence of fear, right? Courage is the ability or the strength or the decision to maintain your commitment long after the emotion that set the decision has faded away. That's what courage is. And all of us have had courage. And all of us have lacked courage. But understanding what courage is not the absence of fear. Courage, in fact, is grace under fire. It's when everything says react with anger, react with zest, react with, an offensive. But in reality, it's grace. It's calm. It's being peaceful, right? I read a quote by, I think it was the Dalai Lama. No, I actually think it was Buddha. And he said, he says, you'll not be punished for your fear, but you'll probably be punished. No, you will not be punished by your anger, but you'll probably be punished because, I got this wrong. Let me get this right. You will not be punished for your anger, but you will probably be punished by your anger. Forgive me for that, but that's what it said. In other words, it's your anger inside of you that creates this energy, the negative, that binds you up, that puts you in a way, right? It puts you in a way that you can be destructive. You see, A guy once asked me, is it possible to be brave when you're scared? And I said, frankly, the only time you can ever be brave is when you're scared, because it gives you an opportunity to respond. It gives you an opportunity in the face of it. Most people want to see you go away, but recognizing that success is not final and failure is not fatal. It's having the courage to continue that counts, according to Winston Churchill. It's the courage to continue, that success is not final and failure is not fatal, but it's having the courage to maintain your convictions. That even though the world wants to see you be small and go away, the reality is that does not serve the greater good. Because overcoming challenges becomes a story that gets shouted from the mountaintops that says, overcome. Not been overcome, but overcome. They've done it. They found their way through it. And that's really what it's about. So I really want you to take the time to recognize that sometimes you may boil up with some intrepidation that says don't go on, but I promise you, if you'll just take that one more step, if you'll just continue to push on one more thing. And remember that it's understanding that when that feeling and trepidation comes on and says hide, run away, don't do it, it's lean forward and recognize that all things are possible, to count it all joy, that all things work good for the greater good, that there is a great message behind this, that when failure happens, God didn't make it happen, but he's part of the solution. He's the great restorer, and that's the beauty of it. And recognizing that outside of the will of God, there's nothing I want, but inside the will of God, there's nothing I fear. And if we can begin to walk and breathe in that concept, that inside the will of God, there's nothing I fear, but outside the will of God, there's nothing I want, then I walk in that zone. And I'm not trying to be too, overly religious with you or whatever your particular situation happens to be. It's just that from my position, my strength comes from knowing whose I am and who I am within his perspective of grace and excellence and restoration. That failure is not final. But if you don't learn from it, it repeats itself and repeats itself and repeats itself until that day comes when you finally have learned that eventually at that point you get set free. My pastor Bill Johnson says there will be a day in your life that you won't even remember the shame or the failure or the pain. That day will come when you are so far away, you've recovered so far that you'll never repeat yourself. That God knows in such a profound way that you have learned so much that you don't need to be reminded to stay the course. Because you're so woven in this life of a grateful response to the gift that you've received of favor and restoration and grace. And because of that experience, life becomes so abundant. And your life becomes a message and a meaning. You've been through your test. Now you've got your testimony. So courage, that's what it's about. Learning how to stay strong in the face of the challenges. Don't run. Don't hide. Don't be small. Stand up. Be bold. Be strong. Learn. Recognize. Go through the process to restore and to rebuild, and be a man and be a woman and learn how to deal with it, and recognize that one day this too shall pass and it will be used for the greater good of the kingdom. Looking forward to discussing more kingdom confrontation with you in the future. God bless you and have a great night. See you soon somewhere, somehow.